and I'll remember that for next time.
Yeah, and it's also a good way to make sure you don't have to, like, because you want to know what they got from your lesson.
Yeah.
And it's a good way to make sure that you're getting, like a pulse check for how well they retained it without having to collect a ton of papers.
So on more than one occasion, somebody's walked up to me at the end of the class and said, do you want this? Do you want this? And I think they want me to say yes.
Yeah.
A couple times I have, and I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
But, so that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I have the agenda open. Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Will you please?
Mm-hmm.
But, so it's not, it's not necessarily being graded. It's just something that we could look at to see how it went.
Yeah, like some of them will be graded. I just know that the trimester is closing, so I figured we didn't want to add more grading because we don't need more grades in terms of like small process grades. But we'll talk about that in CPT, like which assignments we want to grade weekly. So some of the exit tickets moving forward will count as a grade, but just for this week they didn't. And you don't have to tell kids that.
Okay.
I usually
I can assure you, if there's one thing I'm sure of in my second trimester, where I will be here for the whole trimester, is that when something pops up that I'm to grade, it's getting graded that night.
Yeah, I think
it's amazing how much of it there is.
Yeah, and it adds up very quickly.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing I wanted to.
Could you reach into that box next to you and get me a thing of oatmeal to the left there?
Yes.
No, there's an open one to the left.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
No.
Is that what you wanted?
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you very much.
Gee, I didn't know there was food here.
Yeah, I mean, you help yourself to some oatmeal if you want.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to talk about first was this was like your first, week here teaching your like own materials that you came up with. So how did that feel?
I think you sort of feel invested, and you sort of feel you think it might be more likely than otherwise that the children will know how much you like the material, because you get to say things like, I did it this way because, I did it this way because, and it wasn't just my material, it was my Angelo. So
Yeah.
And what made it especially interesting is that we had covered a poem of hers before, Cage Bird, but not with any of the background of her. So they saw a poem just as a poem, and now they see a poem and a performance, and now they know something of her background. The materials included stuff about her childhood, not her whole thing. And it was really interesting. A couple kids picked up what I meant by she was seriously assaulted, and not because I dropped a hint or a clue or a wink or something. They just picked it up. So it was much more. Not that this is why we're here, but it was way more fun teaching something that I put together than something that came from a King curriculum vendor. So.
Nice. So I'm hearing that like you being able to put the poem into context was able to allowed you to like teach it through a different lens, which is great, especially because like we're focusing on rhetoric this unit, and a lot of analyzing rhetoric, you have to understand the context in which the text takes place. So like that background on her, it's really crucial in their ability to analyze.
You literally got to say rhetorical questions, not meant to be answered.
Yeah.
Although that was not really part of the lesson, but it came up. Also, it was really funny when I applied for this job. I don't look like most of the students, but Maya Angelou does. And she had a rough childhood, and for all I know, there's probably a couple kids right there in front of me having a rough childhood. So hopefully none of them will go mute for 5 years.
Yeah. All right. So, what is one thing that you feel like went well in yesterday's lesson?
the 2 minutes and 15 seconds where they committed themselves to being quiet during the video. Now, I admit to encouraging that by putting the word detention on the board and saying, I'm happy to write a name. And I got, every time, I taught it all day, every time I got 2 minutes and 15 seconds of not a sound. And the beauty of not a sound is that if they can't make a sound, they might as well watch the video. So it went well.
Nice.
Yeah.
So thinking of yesterday's lesson, what is something that could have gone better? So like if you were to teach this again next year, like what is something you would adjust?
It was impossible to tell how long things would take, and I ended up having more time than content.
Yeah. Yeah, I think pacing is probably one of the hardest things. A good type and talk. A good piece of advice I got is typically however long it will take you to do something, it'll probably take a student's 2 or 3, maybe even 4 times the amount of time. So sometimes it's helpful to do the lesson out yourself, and basically that will give you a kind of time frame for about how long it will take kids to do things. Also, I think especially when you are reading texts, you had 2 kind of informational texts, having almost a pause in between them. You had some questions that were about the text, but trying to put the text into relation to the students. So I don't know, you asked them
that was a lot one after the other.
Yeah, you asked them do you keep a journal? And I think a cool follow-up to that could have been what is the value of a journal? If you keep one, when do you use it? And just kind of building on the idea of journaling. So I think those are good ways to kind of elongate a lesson, but not necessarily add in a ton of more super heavy stuff. Because you had a lot of content, but I think you could have built in a little bit more questions that the opinion-based questions that would engage the students with the text.
Right.
So that's a good way to sort of make sure your lesson is a little bit longer if you need it to be. And those are also things that you usually teach the first time, and then when you go back and you know how it went, you're okay, well, this is a good place for us to pause and talk about this, or this is a good place for me to make students give me their opinion on this.
That's interesting, because the opinion-based question about whether she should have felt responsible, I preceded asking the question by saying there's no right or wrong answer to this, and I got a lot of feedback to it. On the journal question that was there, somebody who's actually in the meditation and journal class wrote, I don't journal because I don't need to reflect. So I gave him the daily award for self-awareness.
That's funny.
But if we could go back 1 second, I'm surprised what I didn't pick when you said what went well was the fact that each one of the stanzas for each one of the classes for the poem was read by a different student. And partway through the day, I started asking each student after they read, as they were walking back, I said, have you ever stood in front of the class and recited or read anything before? And every single one was a no. So I think it mattered. And some I'd make the invitation and they just sit there mute. And then after they saw a few of their classmates, guess what? Their hand goes up. So it was, and then PC at the end of the day for class management reasons, I was, if you talk, I'll consider you volunteered. And nobody said no. So
nice.
Up they came. So it went very well.
Gotcha.
So hopefully today goes.
Nice. And I think that the fact that kids are comfortable with reading in front of the class, especially poetry, which can be a little bit challenging, is showing that like you're able to create a space in which they feel comfortable to like show that level of vulnerability. So
and there was the one who I never would have thought would not want to come up front, Anthony B, who could not be more expressive.
Yeah.
And so, okay, you can read from there, and he read from there. Other than that, absolutely everybody came up.
Nice.
The one I thought would love to do it.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you ask, like, there have been times where I've, like, had a bunch of kids who are really chatty, and I have them have, like, a discussion, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be great, and it's just, like, crickets. So sometimes, like, the chattier ones, when you give them, like, a talk with a purpose, they get a little reserved. All right, so what I wanted to talk about today was a little bit of classroom management stuff.
Okay.
So we had talked last week about the idea of using like the least restrictive types of like strategies for managing classes. So like while like we can do like the detention on the board, if it works, it works, but we want to try to like add some more things to like your arsenal, so to speak.
Okay.
So what we're going to do today is, full disclosure, something I hate doing, but it is helpful. It's just very awkward. But we're going to do some like role playing. So the first time I'll be the teacher, you'll be the student, and then we'll swap. But what we're going to work on today is calling to attention. So that is the way in which you are going to get the student's attention. So for some teachers, it's the clapping in, and then the kids clap back. For some teachers, it's asking for silence. For some teachers, it's like that countdown, like I need it quiet in 5, 4, or like 3, 2, whatever gets you to 1. But just whatever way works for you to ask the students to have eyes on you. And then waiting, so wait time for 100%. So making sure that before you give an instruction, all of the students have like eyes on you and are focused. And then positive narration, so when kids are maybe being a little not following directions in the way you would like them to, rather than highlighting the kids who aren't doing what they should, highlighting the kids who are, because that one like acknowledges like the positive behaviors, but then it also kind of like is a way to indirectly call out kids who aren't doing what they need to do. So we're gonna role play this. It's gonna be a little strange one to role play because like there's just 2 of us. So I'm going to ask you to be the student. So you're going to be, chatting, talking, not paying attention to me. I'm going to call to attention, wait for 100%. Feel free to make me wait as long as you feel is necessary. And then I'll practice some positive narration, and then we'll switch, and then we will talk about it. Okay?
Okay.
All right. All right. I need voices off in 3, 2, 1. I need books closed. I need eyes and ears. I see Anthony's eyes. I see Felicia's eyes. Waiting for one more. Love that we're reading, but I need your attention.
Could have gone longer.
Thank
you.
All right, so now I would give my instruction, but it is important to like wait. One thing, I like that you used the book because that can be a little challenging because like you see a kid like engaging in something that's not necessarily like a bad thing, but they're all like, we also need their attention.
I got a couple to draw.
Yeah, so I think like acknowledging that they are doing something good, but also not like acknowledging that they're not following the direction, but not like you're being bad, don't follow the direction is good. We are out of time, so I was going to make you do this, but I do want you moving forward to try to do these things in your class.
This because it's basically you just could have said do what Robert does.
Yeah.
This is what Robert does.
Yeah. So yeah, try.
But I have been doing the countdown.
Good.
Since the last time you and I talked about it, I have been doing the countdown.
Nice.
Sometimes I refer to it as we'll do the 2nd grade countdown.
Yeah.
I do the countdown.
Yeah, and so
And
just
it's been helpful.
good. So keep doing the countdown and make sure you wait until 100% of them are focused on you because you deserve their attention.
Thank you.